remember this map? Please pretend you do, even if you don't, because it's changed a bit since then. This is the Niavár world map as it was originally planned to look in the first video I ever made about Niavár, and what it looks like now is this. It's quite a change, right? I'm gonna show you how I did that, and then also how I labeled some of the map. I'll get to that later in the video. First, before I start, I want to apologize for any possible mouse or keyboard sounds that are gonna pop up in this video. This is all recorded live, and I'm gonna be in Photoshop in a second, and I'm gonna need to move things around, and I'm gonna need to click and all that. So, you know, if I ever click while speaking, I won't be able to edit that out. Sorry. Anyway, let's get to the actual thing. Oh, before I start, there's a middle stage that I want to show you for this map, which looks like this. Because what I noticed about my old map was that the dimensions were all wrong. It had to be much wider than it actually was to be a full world map that would fit on a globe. But when I added ocean to both sides, it all seemed a little crammed, so I changed this continent up here, Gindris, to be a little larger, which is nice, because now not all the continents are like similar in size. And then also, right, this bit here, Ashok, this is the map that I drew and painted in the last Niavár video. I wanted to do the full world map in that style originally, but I don't think I'm ever gonna do that. I do want to paint some regional maps in like more stylized ways, but I think for the world map itself, it just works better in this new style I chose, instead of the hand-drawn style. So that's what I went with, and that's the explanation for why I did it. Now let's actually get into Photoshop and show you how I made this. Alright, so here we are. This is the map, the way it started. It's just 2 layers. One darker layer is the ocean, this thing, and then one for the land masses, all of them on one layer. Next thing I did was I created an extra layer here on top. I'm gonna clipping mask it, create a clipping mask. So now when I draw on this layer here, it only affects any land masses. As we can see, if we zoom in, this has absolutely no texture. I wanted to create some texture first. What I did for that was I went to filters, render, clouds. By the way, this should all be possible in things like GIMP, for example, as well. Probably other programs that I haven't used. I don't really like Adobe that much. Don't give them money if you can avoid it. But anyway, I'm very used to Photoshop, unfortunately, because I've been using it for so long. So I did this, then I went back to filters and render, difference clouds this time, and then difference clouds a second time. So now it looks like this, but the next step is the one that's actually going to make it look good, which is stylize, emboss. Take these settings, boom, looks like this. Right, and if we look at the actual layer that I have in this thing, it looks pretty much exactly like that. All the random textures are a little different, but it's exactly this. So this gives me a good base to work on. I filled this in with green, an overlay layer on top, and then the next step was painting in the mountains, which I did here on a little extra gray layer that has the bevel and emboss layer style on it with these settings. This, unfortunately, in Photoshop itself, when I zoom out or in, the mountains look a little different. When I export this as a PNG, it's gonna look the way it does when I'm fully zoomed in here. So don't work zoomed out like I did for a while on this, because it's not actually gonna look like this when you export it. It's gonna look like this. So you can see all of these mountains are a little uniform. So I created an extra layer on top, same bevel and emboss layer style on this, and I just went over it again with a few different brushes this time, ones that I made myself from actual real-world height map data, which really gives these mountains a little more of a mountainy look, you know? And that's like most of the work done, honestly. Right, because now I have this, and if I put the rivers and lakes on the map as well, so see all this, now it's a lot of color work. So next up, I created a hard light layer in this beige or tan color to indicate deserts. I always work with texture brushes for this, right? So it adds a little extra texture. Just looks better in the end, I think. And what I also do, as you can see here, these are all masked, these layers. That makes the file bigger in the end, obviously, but it's a more non-destructive workflow if that's important to you. Next up, after this, another layer on top for the deserts, a linear dodge just to add a little lighter sand, and then same sort of thing here with a hard light layer in this rust color or whatever you want to call it, to add just a little bit of color variation in these desert areas, right? Also, by the way, this map, as you can see, is the least detailed around here and here, and the most detailed on Niavár itself, this continent here, which is why I'm focusing on this and showing you what I'm doing. So, what do I want to show next here? The forests bit, just because all the green bits look a little uniform right now, I wanted to add a little extra darker green to indicate where forests might be. Yeah, now the interesting one is this one. The wasteland. This is the Korean wasteland down here. I'm circling with my mouse, but you can't see it yet. With all the groundwork laid here, with the mountains and the green and the deserty color and the little reddish accents around here, I just put a overlay layer in purple on top, and it looks like this, which is really nice, if I do say so myself, because this looks like bruised flesh, which is perfect for what I imagined the wasteland looking like. So that's that. Now if we zoom out, you know, I like the wasteland, and the zoomed out version, you can really tell how big this thing is. Like, a lot of people used to live here and don't anymore. Right, the ocean thing is like this. Oh no, it's not the last, because actually I forgot the ice caps. That's one. But then the oceans are actually like the last thing that I've been working on. As you can see, very work in progress. I've just been going through this with a soft brush so far, based on the old map, because for some reason I started with the oceans on the old map. I don't know why. But yeah, so that's that so far. I could also show you some of the extra layers I have here. Oh, this layer 16, by the way, is just, it's a little soft light layer with 10% opacity. It just kind of unifies the colors, but I don't work with that on because it would fuck the colors up. This is an interesting bit, maybe the extra layers here. If I turn this on, you can immediately see the plates, and then the arrows show which direction the plates are all moving in. The interesting bits here, I think, are these. Like this plate over here, like this part actually belongs to like mainland Niavár, while this on the left is Korean. And these plates are actually sort of drifting apart. And you can sort of see the Rift Valley forming here. And then the opposite is happening here, where this eastern bit of Niavár slammed into the main continent, like millions of years ago or whenever. And it created this huge mountain range. Also, by the way, I'm not a scientist. I haven't studied any of this, I'm working based on vibes, basically. Just trying to follow tutorials here and there and building up my own world based on all of what I've learned. But none of this is perfect, none of this would hold up to any real scientific scrutiny, so don't take it too seriously. But let me just show you a little bit more here. What do I have? I have the ice caps here, those sound interesting. Made some notes for where fjords would probably be, where the glacial maximum was at some point. Hotspots that you probably can't see, yeah, not really because the yellow, whatever. And like volcanic activity on this sort of island chain, and this one, and then here at the Rift Valley. Anything else? No, nothing else actually. So let me transition smoothly to the next bit of my presentation by hiding this again and asking the question, now how did I go about making these parts of the map where the distortion sets in? And does this actually work? If we wrap this around a globe, is this gonna look normal? Or is it gonna look weird? Well, I can show you. We just have to quickly go to Blender for that to happen. Alright, here we are in Blender. And what I've done here is, ignore this part on the left for now. I've wrapped it around a globe, my whole map, which, you know, it has a seam unfortunately for now, but it kind of works. You can see some of this just looks weird because the pixels are being distorted. There's also the drawing layer on top that doesn't entirely line up with the image underneath, right? This on the left is the drawing layer. I'll get to that in a second. But you can see it does actually kind of work. And it's really cool to look at the world this way. Now what I've done with this drawing layer is the following. I loaded in my previous version of the map and I looked at the parts that were distorted, right? Like up here. And then I drew in new shapes that would look less distorted. So, right, imagine this, I'm drawing this sort of shape in here. Looks a little weird because, like I said, the pixels are being extremely distorted here. But you can see, or you can't really, but if I draw in like some thick lines here, you can see them appear on this layer here that I can then export as a PNG and overlay over my Photoshop file, and then I can draw in the shapes the way they would look in the 2D version, and then the distortion actually sort of makes sense. Anyway, let's move on to the next program, because I have another one lined up. This time it's QGIS. Welcome to the third layer of hell, also known as QGIS. A program that I know basically nothing about, and I'm probably not actually using it quote-unquote correctly, but it works for what I'm doing with my world here. So I'm just going to show you what I did. You can see I loaded in my 2D version of the map, and then we zoom in on Niavár here. I can show you the funny bit first. Put in a little Germany here for size reference, because this is about as big as Germany would be in here, and I'm German, so I know sort of intuitively how big Germany is. So that actually helps. But the important bits are these. These are political units. I know this says sketch politics because I have another layer called political units, but you know, these are the political units, nations, or whatever you want to call them. You can see some of these have placeholder names. Actually, a lot of them have placeholder names. Nothing's ever really 100% final. But, you know, I'm pretty happy with a lot of these. right now. I can also turn the towns on here. Little dots across the map. These are cities, towns, villages. Sometimes, though so far I haven't really put in any villages aside from these bits here for fun. But these 5 dots here, if we zoom in a little further, the names will appear. These are the important cities, the most important locations across Ashok. These are where the Karek people think their sky serpents emerged from the ground. They all correspond to one of the 5 sky serpents, right? So this one's the biggest. This is Karam Erik, so Karam's origin is sort of what that means. That's here. Then we have Kulum Erik, Aska Erik, Dundu Erik, and Kabigal Erik. What you can see if you look at these is that these are all different sized dots, and that actually means something, because when I go in here, we can see I have some information on these cities. Karam Erik, for example, population 152,000. Leadership, Serpent's Council. Dundu Erik, population 2,300, which is quite a lot, to be honest, for a desert town, because that's what that is. And there's very little water there. All 5 of these cities are important pilgrimage sites for members of the Serpent's Council themselves, but also regular people who would like to go on pilgrimages across Ashok. The representatives of the Serpent's Council, right, of the Sky Serpents themselves, often visit these, specifically the ones that they represent. Remember how, like, the eldest member of the Serpent's Council is always the one representing Karam? But, for example, if you're the counselor representing Aska, then every now and then you would have to go to Aska Erik. Just remember that. Anyway, let's look at... oh no, it's buggy. Oh well. Vonoria actually has... I actually did go in here and I filled out all the names. So these are actually all canon. These are not placeholder names. And we can see this is the capital, Khelanunuya, current capital. Valayari has been mentioned before in a teaser, in a little text, that there is like a historian from Valayari. Another interesting bit that I could talk about is this here, Erwinask. This isn't really a nation. This is a group of tribes that sort of follow the same leader, but they often fight among each other. There's a lot of war going on in this place. But the Erwinask people, they live in this river valley here in the mountains, and whenever their leader dies, they all gather here at this lake in Asawi, and they elect a new leader from the women attending this ceremony, because all their leaders are women. They have a highly gendered society in which the men do hard work and they fight, and the women think and they lead. And what happens when a new leader is elected is she has to go up the mountains by herself, climb into the mountains, find her way to a cave, a very specific cave, stay there for a couple of days, and then return. And what the people there believe is that when she returns, she'll be invigorated by the spirits of their ancestors. They will live within her now, and therefore she will be ready to lead. Now, what actually happens there in the cave, nobody knows, and if there's actually like ancestor spirits inhabiting the women's bodies is not very clear either. But something happens, because a lot of times these new leaders come back changed. Like they seem different, they don't seem to have the same memories anymore, or they might even go fully mute and not ever speak again, which makes leading a little hard, but there are interpreters around for that sort of situation. Anyway, that is just a little anecdote, just a little bit of new information that I haven't talked about yet. Yeah, that's that though. Oh no, it isn't actually, because I haven't shown you the roads, because there are trading networks. Oops, sorry, I hit my thing. You can see a road here, these, once again, placeholder names. Right, we could see one road going across here, but the most important one, of course, is here, because it connects all the coastal nations here through this river here to the road here, which leads all the way around to the east. So the east and the west are connected through this extremely long road, and this fork as well, right? They both end at a river here, so these come together around here. So this allows trade from east to west and west to east. Just a little fun extra thing that I wanted to add here. Anything else I really want to say about this? I don't think so. Maybe. This continent here, Gindris, that I've talked about before, how I made it bigger and all that. This is interesting. This is an interesting continent because there are non-human humanoids on this continent. I haven't ever said anything about any non-humans in my videos about either of my projects, but there are sort of humanoid reptilians living on this continent, which is why the human population of Gindris is actually pretty low. I made some notes. I'm just gonna read my notes here real quick. 4 fingers, including an opposable thumb. Okay, so they have 1 less finger than human beings do. Evolved from tree climbers. Yes. Tonal language, where different sounds at different pitches convey different meanings. Also, slight color shifts around the eyes for added language complexity. Right, so they have like thinner skin around their eyes, and they can shoot blood into that, which would shift the color around their eyes, make it a little more red, a little less red. That can convey meaning in their language. They have no discernible sexual dimorphism, are a little smaller than humans, and generally thinner. That's all I'm going to say about them for now. You can imagine with their complex language, human beings don't understand them, and they don't understand human beings, and that has led to lots of conflict in the past, present, and probably future as well. Anyway, I'm going to end it here. I hope you enjoyed my little tour of my map. This is where it's at right now. For now, thanks for watching, and I hope you tune in next time. Bye bye.